we're live in 3, 2, 1. Go for it, guys.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Metamaniacs Show. This is episode, what are we on, 8? I really should know that going into this.
1500.
No, I don't think that's quite right. I think this is episode 8, but I'm sure you can tell in the title. We'll figure it out. We are talking about the bus today, which is, I think, a pretty vague thing, but let me explain it here. I'm actually going to explain this with a story. So, last year, I'm sure many of the listeners here may also be interested in MMORPGs. There's a lot of crossover that tends to happen with that. Small games that we get obsessed with, playing with other people, social games, that kind of stuff. WoW Classic came out last year, and my experience with that really inspired me. I wanted to talk about this subject at some point because it came out, and I played WoW back in the day, World of Warcraft, for anyone who is really out of the loop. It happens. I played World of Warcraft, the Blizzard's MMORPG, back when it first released. I never even got to level cap, but I have fond memories of playing it back in the day.
When it first
and while
released?
Classic came out, sorry?
When it first released, when
it first. So we're talking
that's
vanilla.
Cool. Yeah, that's
WoW,
cool,
right? So I played back then, and just have really fond memories of my experience playing that. When WoW Classic was announced, I thought, well, that's cool, but I think we've kind of moved past it. Whatever, MMORPGs today have a design that's actually there's something that happens in trading card games too. It's just a more modern design that newer games tend to have that we sort of have moved into for good reasons, right? The way that people approach games and what they look for in games is maybe a little different than it used to be. So I ignored it as it released, but man, I could see the bus driving by. Okay, so and all of my friends were on it. All these people were posting about it. People on Twitch were streaming it, and it got me real jelly, and I wanted to be on the bus too. So I only let a couple weeks pass by when I thought maybe I'll just give it a try just for fun. Whatever, $15 to sub, and we'll just see how it goes. Maybe I'll get bored of it like I think in a week, but I'll get $15 worth of fun out of it. I ended up playing for several months. I joined a guild. I got to level cap, which I never got to before in the old game. And then I kind of, I had my fun with it, and then I was done. Yeah. But it just got me thinking about how sometimes, you'll go into maybe a new trading card game will release, and you'll think, yeah, I don't really know if I care too much about that. But there's this whole social, almost peer pressure aspect to just seeing everybody enjoying the novelty of the new experience together, or in WoW Classic's case, the nostalgia, getting to experience that again. And I wanted to ask you guys if you guys have had any similar experiences with, especially with trading card games. But I mean, I think we can start off our conversation with anything that we can use to kind of loop into the trading card game space. Sure. So I'm going to open the floor to either of you. Go for it.
Hit it, Jordan.
Well, I can't think of anything in recent time where I quote-unquote missed the bus on anything that I regret not jumping on the bus for.
You're a big jump.
He's always at the jump. Yeah, he is a bus jumper.
I am always the bus driver.
Yeah,
sure.
He jumps in, kicks the driver out the window.
Yeah, there is one thing that I did miss the bus on by 12 years that I recently have got into, like last year, and Dan has also jumped on this bus, and I can kind of talk about the missing the bus portion. It's not as relevant to what Dan was talking about because it wasn't a bunch of my friends and everyone I knew like playing it. It was just something that I eventually found and was like, this is cool, I'm going to get into this. And then I jumped into like a pool of community that was been established for like 10 years, which is UFS. So UFS is an old game.
Pull out the old faithful.
we jumped on that train, and I essentially just jumped on it because like Yu Yu Hakusho's great. I love Yu Yu Hakusho. I want to support anything that has that IP. Jumped into it, bought a bunch of stuff, and then I just fell in love with the game. And then I had to play a lot of catch up, which missing the bus, depending on what you're missing the bus on, can be daunting and kind of lame. I can kind of speak about WoW in this way too, because I don't like WoW at all. But I was in WoW when WoW came out. I missed the initial release, but I had a handful of friends that were like hype about it. and it was back when MMOs were all new and it wasn't like a stale format. And I hopped in and I liked Warcraft 3, so I was like, I guess I'll give it a try. I didn't like the payment model, but all my friends and like their parents were like, here, take these month free keys. You can use them for like 3 months before they stop telling you can't. Like, it'll be free. There's no cost. So
Nice.
I jumped in and played
That's
it.
cool.
And like the one thing that really sucks about missing the bus is, again, this is your mileage with this varies depending on what you missed the bus on and how long you missed it for, which is playing catch up. For example, in WoW, since it is an older game, there was no way, aside from having your friends make a brand new character, to like play with you. So like you want to play with your friends, but they're all like, oh, I got to do this epic new thing that they're at. And then you end up like having a different experience because you're trying to play catch up. So you either have to play like twice as much as they are to catch up, or you just like get left in the dust eternally until you get to level cap.
Jordan, I have two responses to what you're saying. The first is about jumping onto UFS. I actually, when, you know, like you said, I joined you with that as well at Gen Con, but I saw that as jumping on the bus and not a scenario where we missed the bus, because it was not UFS I was getting into,
evolving.
but what I was excited about was the My Hero Academia CCG, the bus for which hasn't even left the station yet.
Yeah.
So
it's still
it broke down and they're fixing up the tires.
But yeah, so I didn't see that as so much as we had missed the bus entirely. However, you're right, when we did jump into it, then we thought, okay, well, we want to be on the forefront of preparedness for when My Hero Academia releases. So then we started getting into UFS, and then we started to deal with what you're saying, which is that the reason that when I was jumping into WoW Classic, I felt such a strong urge, because I saw that, you know, I was thinking about how, well, the more time I let pass, the more ahead of me everybody is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think that applies to CCGs really strongly, because in some ways, and in some ways it doesn't, but because if you want to be a super competitive player,
you got to hop on.
You
want to
get to that kind of end game as fast as you can, and you want to be with everybody who's doing that.
Yeah, the bus doesn't stop.
No, and like, it's certainly possible to jump into a game late, and to try and catch up, but
if you're interested, I'd highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
but delve into it.
The two sides of things are your play experience and, especially in a TCG, your product acquisition.
Because if you got to jump into the fresh bus, you got one set to get normally. If you jump into the bus like a year and a half late, you're like, cool, there's
12.
how many sets in standard? 12? I got to try to buy a bunch of cards to like get the cards I need for this.
Or network and get some great friends on your side. Because
like commons and uncommons, more often than not, if you have a couple friends and they are the type of people like, you know, like us, where we buy like maybe like a case or a half a case depending on the size of it, we generally have like so many commons and uncommons. We're like, here, please join the game so I can give these to you.
Please, God, I don't have space anymore.
Or sometimes you just give them to them in hopes that they'll be like, well, I have these cards now, I guess I better play.
No,
but it's the chase cards is really what you'll end up having to purchase.
Is that all you felt like, piggybacking off of Jordan's statement, Dan? Am I good to
I just want to say one more thing, which is that this is actually the benefit to having a game with a pretty tight rotation also, is that the bus is constantly heading back to the station, and it's much easier to jump on into a competitive format when they keep lowering the amount of, you know, increasing the amount of stuff that's available and then dropping it back down to sort of a baseline again and doing that. And Magic, for what it's worth, does a great job with that if you do want to play standard.
And if you like that, I actually felt like we'll get into that in a little bit here, actually. Okay, so let's I have 3 instances of missing the bus and hopping on it that I can think of that come to mind.
Okay.
And so we'll go from like furthest back to nearest. When I was 12, I didn't have an Xbox 360. I would go over to my friend Andrew's house, and all summer long we would play Halo 3 and Gears of War. All summer long. I came from a PlayStation and GameCube family. So I had Super Mario. Shout out to Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I've got my pre-order at Best Buy right now.
Same.
Super hype. I played 3D platformers. Actually, not a ton. But I played a lot of Zelda. I played a lot of JRPGs. Dark Cloud, OG, awesome. Dark Cloud, such a good game. I was an idiot, and I sold all of my teammates' weapons and maxed my one weapon out when I was like 12 years old. And then I went through the dungeon where you had to fight with each team through a dungeon. And guess who was using the regular slingshot to try to get through it because he hated that character, and he stopped, and he couldn't beat the game because of it. So
Nailed it.
okay, so yeah, nailed it. Don't take JRPG advice from Dylan. But yeah, so I came from
Noted.
all those like strong single player games, which I loved and adored, but everyone was on this dun 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 dun. Everyone's like, you gotta play this game, and I'm like, what? So I play Halo 3 with my friend Andrew, and I'm like, I have dial up. Like, people are playing other people in separate houses. This is amazing. Like, I had no, I kind of knew that, we'd all played couch co-op at that point in time, which we should get back to a life of couch co-op, because TCGs are basically couch co-ops and IRL. So, I wish that, we could get back to that, but I had no idea. So, I'm like, I get home and I'm like, Mom, what can I do to get an Xbox 360? I'm like, how can I make this happen? So I spent all summer working my butt off and doing everything we could, and somehow, some way, I can't remember. I think I went to my grandpa's and picked rocks, right? Like the worst stuff, just to try to. I'm working my best to buy my ticket, right? And we finally get on, and I've got Halo 3 and Gears of War 2, and I'm just having the best time. We play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This is like shooter heaven, right? And this is the first time I've been into it. And if you don't know me now, I'm a pretty big PC shooter gamer, and these are my founding roots. My founding fathers was Halo 3, Gears 2, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I didn't play Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare until after Modern Warfare 2, which to some is sacrilege, and I understand that. But yeah, so I hopped on that, and I worked so hard, and I was so hyped, and I'm so glad that even though I was late to the game, I hopped onto it, because it was such a horrible experience. God, Xbox Live Gold back then was so bad, but it was wonderful. It was the Wild West of people throwing slurs at you and telling mother jokes and teabagging, and it was a wild experience, and I'm so happy that I got onto it. Second most recent, we've talked many times about this. I haven't really played Magic the Gathering, but to unforeseen circumstances, I've played a few Magic the Gathering games recently, and I like it a lot. That's my tech talk. So
Well, we'll just tease a little bit that there will be a podcast coming up where we'll be talking about that a little more.
And I'll definitely delve into that. So third, most recently, actually was last night. I loaded up my Roku. I dropped my projector screen down, fired up the surround sound, and watched Hamilton on Disney+.
This is a bus I haven't gotten on yet.
Everyone
I
has
really
been,
want to, though.
Oh my God, it was so good. Everyone's like,
yeah, that's what everyone says.
Like, everyone's like that, and there's a reason. It's so funny and witty, and okay, so quick pitch to anybody who hasn't watched it. I'm not going to spoil anything. It's epic rap battles of history. If the writers were actually incredibly clever, and they're pretty clever, but they're so clever, and they put a Broadway musical budget on it. It's
Got
the
some
entire
Titan words here.
The entire thing is yeah, I know Dylan Quern will slit my throat if he hears me dissing epic rap battles of history. But it's
I'm actually a big fan too.
Yeah,
so.
well, no, I know, I'm just teasing. But dude, it's that if you put hundreds of millions of dollars behind it, it is so good. The entire show, I had no idea. The pacing was perfect. There was some incredible scenes in there where there's a whole rewind scene where everyone is going around and the one character's explaining what's happening, and I'm like, this is it. This is why I said founding fathers of Xbox, by the way. If you remember 2 minutes ago, I name dropped founding fathers. But it was so good. And God, am I happy that I finally was all right, it's 2.5 hours long. Ugh. And like that's not bad. I watched Tenet, last week, and that was awesome too. But dear God, you got to watch Hamilton if you haven't, because that was so fun. It was fun, funny, entertaining. It was directed masterfully. Like I can't give as much praise or enough praise to it. In fact, like I should just start a whole movie podcast just so I can talk about like these things. But Hamilton was super good. Now back to your regular scheduled TCG content.
Well, I'm glad you brought Hamilton up actually for that, because this is an example of something where the bus doesn't go very far, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this is a situation where, yeah, everyone was super hype about it. Like, it's been on Broadway for years now,
Yeah.
right? And they just put out the Disney Plus movie in July of this year.
So
and
good.
even, you could probably, I mean, people have been raving about it for a long time, but you could probably have watched that in 5 years and immediately get on the same page as everybody else, right? I mean, you maybe haven't memorized the lyrics yet, but they have. But
Not
like
yet.
that's kind of the ceiling, right, of like fandom for a single movie.
Yeah,
or
or a
play or
musical,
whatever.
and yeah.
So there are situations where you can kind of just let the bus drive and catch it later, and
Yeah.
it's like not a big deal. And I think that's why it's been out for years, and you never just like jumped in. You didn't feel that strong like, man, I have to get with everybody on this, because they weren't going anywhere, where it's quite different when your Halo 3 example was awesome, because I was in college then. We had the dorm room that everybody came to,
Ooh, sweet.
and we
That's
played
so
we played
cool.
Halo 3 constantly.
4-player split screen co-op. Let's go.
And we went online with it also. And we played a lot of Valhalla with all the big guns and stuff. So, everyone was just
fun.
like flying around in banshees and ghosts and shooting rockets at each other all the time. And it was just nonsense the whole time. So, yeah, great memories with that. But like, it was definitely a huge like social, everybody wanted to be a part of that at the same time.
It
And
was
it
a
wasn't a thing where you could go,
zeitgeist.
yeah, I'll catch up in a couple of years.
Yep. No.
It just,
I mean,
it was
people
a
still
product
play
of its
Halo
time.
3, but it, yeah, like you said, it was the aughts, right? Like the 2010s, like that time where like people like realized that the internet could be more than like a skeezy machine to like look up like the things that you shouldn't and purchase the things that you probably also shouldn't, like for impulse buys and advertisements, and people like all of a sudden started using it to do the things like you and us three are doing it right now, where they used it to connect and do something that they couldn't do before. And
Yeah.
it's cool.
I mean, and that's exactly what drove me in the first place to the initial World of Warcraft, right? Which is my friends were jumping in, and it was part of that experience was just the uniqueness at the time of being in this like living, breathing world with people around the world that you haven't interacted with before, and getting ganked by Alliance all the time, and all that stuff. It was just part of it. It was part of the world. And I have to say, when I went back to WoW Classic, I did feel some of that again, which was like surprising to me, because I kind of thought, I'm just gonna, like whatever, it'll be cute, and I'll be like, man, games are so much better now than they were back then. But I was like really digging it for a while, and I pretty much only dropped off because I got to the point where raiding was my progression. And I did both raids that were in launch, and then I was like, I just don't want to like commit the time to this every week to sort of gear up and then continue the treadmill.
They've continued to like add content like they did before, right? Like, so it was vanilla, and then they've been. That's so cool. That is
it
a
is
really
super
neat.
Cool. And
concept.
I'm really happy for everyone for whom it was the thing that they wanted to do, and they've gotten to like progress through Blackwing Lair and Naxxramas and all the raids that they
neat.
like sort of put Encourage and everything that they sort of filtered in over time to try and mimic the sort of the initial release of everything. But I just eventually found out for me, it was like, okay, well, I had my fun, and it's not something where I got to the part of the game that I couldn't I just didn't want to commit to keep doing. But I only did it because I felt that pull of the bus was leaving me, and I was going to miss it. And I think in TCGs, this can happen with a lot of people too. We see people jumping onto a novel TCG because people are doing it, because it looks cool, and I think what it comes down to is you have some perception of how you're going to be interacting with this game, how exciting it's going to be to play. And sometimes the novelty wears off kind of quickly.
Yeah.
Have you guys jumped into a TCG before? I mean, I've jumped into so many, so I might be the only one with examples here for this, but where you got into it and then you played for a while and then it just kind of fell apart, and then people just didn't kind of keep playing it for one reason or another.
Jordan, you take it. Hey, hold on 1 second. Jordan, you didn't say you didn't say whether or not you liked Hamilton or if you've seen it. So I'm just he
You're on the
seems oddly
spot.
quiet.
It was a bus I was not interested in at all.
All right. You should.
I let
be,
it
though.
pass by without a notice.
Okay.
Well, you can always catch up again.
Yeah, if you ever. Okay, so
I mean, in the movie realm also, might be very blasphemous to some people, but I've also still have not got on the bus for Fight Club yet.
It's fine. It's a movie.
Fight. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it's better in the context of when it came out. It was pretty incredible for the time of it, but I mean, it's still a very good film. David
It's a
Fincher,
film I
correct?
want to
David
watch
Fincher?
eventually. It's just I haven't ever
I'm
I
not a
don't know.
movie
It's weird.
buff guy. I watched it, I enjoyed it, and I moved on with my
I
life.
am. It's a very, very good film.
Sure, I will not argue that.
But you don't need to see it before you die.
I think
if
I'm
you
the only
haven't.
one who's done this with the TCG, right? Because you guys just haven't dove. Jordan, I think you tend to be maybe a little more reserved with what you get into. I think you tend to, and maybe I'm going to put words in your mouth here, but I think you tend to think very hard about whether you're going to enter something.
No, the reason why I do that since you have met me is because before you met me, when I was, 18 or below, I loved TCGs, and I was, especially during the 90s, obviously I didn't have the money to do it a lot, but I'd buy starter decks here and there because it was cheap and easy. I tried to get into a bunch of different TCGs. Unfortunately for me, both being in smaller towns and Minot and stuff in North Dakota, there wasn't a big community for card games unless you played Magic or Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get my friends into stuff was pulling teeth. It was I don't know why it was so hard to get them, because they were always complaining how bored they were and how they didn't have anything to do. So I'd be like, hey, you guys want to play this? And they're like, nah. And then they just sit there and be like, man, I wish we had stuff to do. I'm like, I have all these things you guys can play. And they're like, nah. So that's why I am that way nowadays, because I have to think hard, because there was so many times that I'd be excited about something, buy it, and then have no one to play it with but myself. So now I'm not getting into this unless I have, X amount of people that are serious about wanting to play it, because I don't want to buy stuff and then be sad when no one around me wants to play and I'm just sitting there by myself, playing games with myself.
Yeah, and that's something that is depending on what the hobby you're getting into. It can be, trading card games are certainly expensive, but other games like Warhammer 40K or something are ones where it can be really devastating if you try to get into the game and get people into it, and then you buy this whole army of models and you spend all this time assembling and you spend all this time painting, and then you say, hey, do you guys want to play? And they're like, not really feeling it.
It's a much higher level of investment for sure. At least initial investment.
I mean, it does. There can be a ton of investment in these things, and it can be a real downer. And I think this going back to my previous point, Warhammer is an example of something where you might. I think that the pull of seeing the painted models that Games Workshop posts and imagining your army that you're going to have and how amazing it's going to be and how cool you're going to paint everything, that's all super enticing. But then the ticket to kind of get on that bus is
Way more costly
buying
than you
them,
were expecting.
assembling them, painting them, and you can get into that and go, man, I don't really like this. I just want to have it.
I think.
What's up, Dylan?
I think actually, so that's actually a very similar stance that I have on it. I think that Warhammer would be, and don't jump on me because I'm going to say something that sounds stupid. I think that it would be amazing if they did this as a video game, where you could, so like, you know, all these RPGs have like model creators, right? Like you can create your own character and stuff like that. Like what if they took like the best model construction system, they brought it into a Warhammer game where you can create your models, your individual characters, all of them, and then you could play like an RTS. And I know there's like some Warhammer games, I'm not sure how RTS-y they are, but if they could emulate that play experience, because then like if you built a digital game, I mean, you Warhammer nerds are like the most committed nerds I've ever met in my life. If anybody's willing to spend like $5,000 on plastic and then $600 on paint and then like 800 hours of time combining plastic and paint into like your own magnificent creation, no, like you've got my infinite respect and fear for that. As far as that goes, yeah, that dedication. I just think that would be like a really cool, like, because I find the creation to be so awesome. I'm an artistic guy, and I love that aspect of it. I see the gameplay mechanics, and it's actually not that hard. There's just a lot of like stuff. You know, you don't get a lot of cinematic moments with like a lot of rulers and dice and stuff like that.
That's just because you haven't been in the hot seat. When you're in the hot seat and you're rolling that quintessential roll that's going to either kill their last dude or not, you're like I remember I wasn't even in the hot seat. I was just in the area. And when Dan had a Demon Prince, which is a pretty beefy dude, he charged one of Dylan's, not this Dylan, a different Dylan we know, but he charged some guardsmen with flamethrowers. And normally this would be just a walk in the park. The Demon Prince is like, it was so much so that like Dylan almost thought, I'll just take these models off the board because they're going to die. He rolls, and he rolled so well, and it was so awesome. And the flamers, did it kill or almost kill your Demon Prince, Dan? I remember just walking over the table and you're like, these guardsmen just like wrecked my Demon Prince.
Yeah, I think it took him down to like one wound left or something. Like so I think funny. He still got there and murdered a bunch of them, but like I think if I remember, crippled. If this is the same one, then the flamethrower guy got away, and then did more damage the next turn or whatever. It was so like Dylan, I completely disagree that like actually just it's once you but the problem is there's this whole barrier to like understanding the emulation. Once you like play the game and get into that, I was listening to a Secret Cabal gaming podcast lately, a great gaming podcast, highly recommend to people who play tabletop board games, etc. They were talking about this idea of having to commit mental energy to be able to even understand a game, and how games can be more accessible by reducing the amount of mental energy you need to like kind of get into that using theme and everything.
Sure. It's
related to this topic in that if you get into a complicated game, but you don't like have the systems kind of internalized, it's really hard then to be able to have the mental energy to get into the theme of what's happening.
Yeah.
When you
it's like
understand
music.
the game fully and you get how it's like emulation works, then that stuff becomes second nature, and your brain is more available to get into the cinema of what's happening.
Sure.
Play out in the game.
Sure. I really like that analogy, that the cinema of what's happening. I respect that a lot.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's just breaking down that wall.
Mm-hmm.
A great example for that too, that's a little more accessible, is like esports. Like think of how many esports that like you aren't in, that you look at and you're like, how can people watch this? That's lame. But then like you start playing it and then you watch, you know, a game again on like an esports channel, and you're like into it. Like think of people who watch like Overwatch. Like when I first saw Overwatch, well, this is a bad example because I liked Overwatch and I was hyped for it. But like I had a couple friends who weren't like, they were just like, oh, whatever, it's another shooter. and they saw me watching some like pro streams, and they're just like, oh, that's kind of neat, whatever. But then after they got into Overwatch, like 3 months later, they'd watch those pro streams, and they're like at the edge of their seat, like, oh shit, are they gonna get this point in time? That's like,
That's cool.
It's
Yeah.
99 to 99. Like, what the hell's happening? But like without like knowing the deep like intricacies of like what's at stake and what's happening, what the players' roles are, like it's hard for anyone to like really get hype about it. And like, yeah, that's
Dude, nobody's butt cheeks clench harder than a pro Overwatch streamer when his team is at 0.2 meters away from the goal, and they're like, we just gotta push it through. Let's go. Get a pulse bomb. Let's go.
And then they just start throwing bodies at it.
Yeah, they're just come on. Just lemming
Widow,
it.
that's when Widow jumps on the cart and everything. That's when you know things are problematic for your team.
Yeah, when the Widow player is being a team player, you know things are scary.
Or my
Ooh, shots
favorite
fired.
is when the point is like on overtime, and you see like the little on the top, and people literally are just throwing themselves on the
Yep.
point to buy you those extra couple seconds.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
Well, so I think what you're bringing up also relates in an interesting way to this idea of the bus, because sometimes when you don't understand this game, when you haven't really been like exposed to it properly, you don't understand why you want to be on this bus. Like sometimes it's
sure.
a peer pressure thing, like I talked about before. But like Jordan, perhaps, and I'm not saying that you did a bad job or anything, but if your friends that you were trying to get into playing various TCGs with you just like didn't grasp what was fun about doing that, then they didn't care to get on the bus, you know? Or
Sure.
if Jordan doesn't understand why Hamilton is great, then he's like, you know, and
To
you know,
explain why
certainly opinions
Hamilton
are
is
gonna
great,
apply
I'm
here, whatever.
gonna send Jordan a 2-minute video of like the shortest song in Hamilton. That's like the funniest song in Hamilton. I'm not gonna send it to Dan because Dan's gonna eventually watch it, but I'm gonna send it to Jordan. It's okay. Sorry, you do your thing. He'll want to
You're-
watch
you're
Hamilton
too
after I
excited.
send this. It is so funny.
Well, and I think that's a great thing to do. You know, when you're trying to get someone into something, you have to kind of. This is when you're trying to be Jordan. You're trying to be the bus driver, right?
Yeah,
You're trying to get people to hop on with you because, especially with the TCG, like it's different if you're just going to get into an online game. If you're going to play World of Warcraft, it's good to do it with friends. That's more fun. That's more exciting, and there's more there's more of that pressure for you to get in. But you can easily just hop on and say, I'm going to play this game now, and there will be people playing with you.
Mhm.
If you want to get people into a TCG, or if you want to get into a TCG yourself, you need people to play it with.
a free
And-
ticket's the best way to get on the bus.
It is. If
Just
you
saying.
can, you know, there's a ton of things you can do to get people on this bus. Number one is to be able to show them what is great about the game in an efficient and sort of tantalizing way. You need to
Mhm.
have like a video that is a short clip that can show them why this is great, or you need to have them be willing enough to sit down and play a game with you. And you have to be careful because you can't give them like, for a lot of games, you can't give them like the most competitive deck.
Well balanced
here,
starter decks
Play this and understand
are
it.
a great way.
What are a great way?
Well balanced starter decks. That's why I think well balanced starter decks are so incredibly important in the success of like an early TCG player's play, or like a constructed esque starter decks. Like I have like 4 decks of Final Fantasy TCG in my pocket that I bring to
Right
every
now?
single event in my pocket.
Take him out.
Pull them out.
That's not your pocket. Your leg isn't over there.
Wow, my God, he actually has them.
But they weren't in his pocket. I
so,
feel betrayed.
But okay, so I have 4 decks
close
that I
enough.
bring in my Gen Con 2019 bag. Shout out to Gen Con. So I bring
Every episode.
I have them in my Gen Con bag. That I mean, whenever I bring my collection, I have to bring like my trades in one bag and my 16 decks in another bag, because I always have like 5 decks that I might want to like mulligan into or whatever I want to play for the week, and then I have at least 4 decks that I have built specifically to like gear towards people that might be interested in it. So if I get a read on like what people have or what they're interested in, so like again, like you said, it's salesmen. It's a salesmanship, right? You got to sell this bus. I got to sell that this is the best ride. You're going to go past all of the 7 wonders of the world. You're going to love that you did it. You're going to take pictures. You're going to tell your family about it. I got to tell you what you can get off of it. So if I'm talking to Dan and Dan's like, I've played all of this stuff. I've got all this Magic experience. And I'm like, all right, what did you like when you played Magic? Okay, I hear Dan's like a pretty like tier like 1 or 2 Magic investment player as opposed to tier 0, which would be like the most crazy competitive. So I'm like, okay, how about
tier 0?
Yeah, no, I know, but now. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to get you a mid-rangey aggro deck. Here you go. You're going to have a lot of fun hitting EX bursts and punching people in the face, and it'll remind you of, like, heavy aggro and Magic, which isn't really a thing in Final Fantasy. And then if I see a brand new player that like Mitch, right? Like Mitch loves saying no to people, right? He loves just, like, looking at his opponent and being like, you're not doing that. Nope. No. Nope. You want nope. So like, that's what he likes to play. So like
he's a control player through and through.
Yep. So I give him a mono fire burn deck that is just like, all right, here's 50 cards in your deck. 18 of them are backups, 18 of them are kill spells, and the other forwards all kill something too. It's like 18 to 20 of them. So like literally everything in your deck is meant to kill whatever your opponent plays onto the field. So he's going to get that awesome experience that he loves packaged in one list. So like I think either really good starter decks are a way to do it, or building your own decks that have these strong like identities to them and not the most complicated play lines are a really good way to get people into the game. And I noticed this actually about sometime last year when we had the what was it called? Dan, remember what, the Metamaniacs when we did our TCG playthrough?
We ran the big demo day at the local shop.
The
where
demo
had,
days.
A whole bunch of different TCGs that we were just people would walk in and sit down at a table and learn how to play. We were teaching Dragon Ball Super.
It was an
Final
awesome
Fantasy,
idea.
Universes and Pokemon all day to people. So
and so when we did that, I learned. I like it was a huge learning experience for me between and I worked with Jordan actually at a convention for Metamaniacs and Paradox, which is our local card shop. Support your LGSs. And we did that, and that was also a learning, like, 'cause that was kind of an intro before the big demo day for TCGs. And I learned, okay, I saw somebody who didn't particularly care for this deck, and I noticed when I was playing him, or he was playing his friend, he didn't have the best time. He didn't seem very interested in playing Final Fantasy again. And I said, hey, okay, let me show your friend this deck, right? I'm like, hey, if I haven't 100% lost you yet, give me a second. I know you're not interested in playing again. Like right now, you felt kind of burned. You didn't really want to. Just if you wanted to sit, I'm gonna give your friend this deck, right? I gave him a different deck that I was like, this just has base fun. It's a Final Fantasy VII. Put big dudes, swing, and like hit EX bursts and win, right? Like it's just like a dumb, fun, swingy deck. And I gave it to him. And this guy, Devin is his name, that was watching, that didn't have a great play experience the initial time. He was like, I'm all for this. That looked like so much fun. Because he just watched his friend who has 0 TCG experience beat the living crap out of me with just this deck that's just meant to like turn forward sideways and like take damage and like accrue free value and stuff. He's like, that looks awesome. I'm like, sure, here you go. You can play it next Saturday. And he came in and he played next Saturday and he loved it. So like I'm just saying, like there's a way to pitch things to people, and even if you're good at it, you can flub up. Like I flubbed up hard. I almost lost him as a player, 100%. But I was like, okay, and he became a regular player, and he's a great dude. Shout out to Devin Miller.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I definitely flubbed up with some locals, getting them into UFS. You can see one of them on camera right now. When I gave them him and his roommate and good friend Cole
This is very true.
demo, I didn't have my starter decks built anymore because it was after we had taught majority of people, and I was like, I don't need these starter decks, and I needed cards from them for the decks I was playing in tournaments, so I dismantled them, and then when they came over to try the game out, I gave them like 2 of my decks, which was terrible idea.
Shame on
Because
you.
since I was new, they were like one of the first decks I've made, so it was back when we like truly got into it. And
Yeah, this is
I
like
knew-
3 weeks after Gen Con.
yeah, like I knew I had messed up like when they left, because the reasonings that they gave me for why they didn't like the game were holistically because of the decks that I made were not A, they weren't made very well in general, and B, they were not made very well against each other. Because like one of the things I remember specifically is I can't remember, I was pretty sure it was Cole. Cole said he didn't like it because the game seemed too swingy, because it was you were playing, and then someone just immediately dies and there was nothing he could do about it. He was playing my first draft, and Dan will know what I'm talking about here. He's playing my first draft Suzaku deck.
That was a combo
Which-
deck.
Yeah, when it wasn't made very well, because I didn't know what I was doing at the time for the game. So I was just like, these cards seem cool. They have Yu Hakusho people on it. Throw them in. Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
for listeners, the premise of that deck was that it was, so it's a traditional combo deck, which means you basically don't do anything until you win immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was trying to play the Prism Storm of Torment, which is Suzaku's ultra rare, which he needed to chain 7 cards together.
Oh god.
He needed to play 7
After
cards in
you
a turn,
have-
and if it's
after
the
you have
7th
stacked.
card, then it becomes gigantic and is unblockable.
It basically unblockable. It gets +7 speed, which it already has 7 speed. So 14 speed, it's not getting stopped. And
Yes.
like you want to get Suzaku stacked up before this happens, ideally. So
Yep.
like, it
so
was
in short, I
didn't-
lost in 1 turn.
Yeah, so like he did that, and like he was just like, oh, I don't really like it, because like I didn't have a good hint of how to defend properly, so I just had stuff in the deck. Like if I were to pitch them another demo now, it would be much better, because now that I know how to make decks, the decks would be more balanced with each other. They'd have equal amounts of defensive and offensive options, so they wouldn't get that feeling of I just play until someone randomly goes off and I die.
I don't know
And
if
are
they
you-
need to be balanced perfectly against each other as much as they are designed well enough to do the thing that they want to do. You
Yeah.
know?
Are
and,
you
like,
guys ready for
obviously-
kind of a hot take?
Hot take.
Yes.
UFS is one of the harder games to get people into. I think this is just a problem that the game has, because that we were talking about that mental wall you had to break through to
Mhm.
start to like get to the cinema and the fun it's really high in UFS, because everything you play has multiple effects.
Mhm.
Tons of stuff stays on board. Stuff you're very freeform in what you can do. Let's like compare to the best basic game we can compare to, which is Magic, right? Just a great baseline. What do you do turn 1? Play a land.
Yep.
Probably pass. What do you do turn 2? You play another land. Hey, maybe you can play that thing in your hand now. You put it down. What does it do? It's a 2/2.
Yeah.
Maybe it has vigilance. Like, in UFS, okay, it's your turn 1. You better play those 4 things in your hand that each have 2 abilities. They're all going to go and play, and they're all going to become active right away. And then on your next
Case
turn,
is the second you play them.
well, yeah. And then you have attacks, and you're checking, and your opponent has blocks, and they all interact with each other, and you have all these enhances. You can spend your attack
Is it a
stuff
high, a
using
low, or
5
a
different
medium
enhancers, your
tack?
thing on your character. It's like, it is just an absolute pain.
It's
to,
a
like,
TCG
try and
player's
get
dream,
into
though.
it. What's that?
It's a TCG player's dream, though. It is like there's nothing I
Yes.
like more than seeing a card game where I'm looking at the board state and I'm like, all right, I need to check every card. Like I need to RTFC times 20. You know, like I need to be aware of like my opponent, what they want to do. I need to watch the player that they're playing as. I'm not sure. I can't remember what that's called. I need to watch like their land line basically. I
Their
need to watch
foundations,
their foundation. I need to
character,
watch their character. I need to know what their activated ability is, what their passive ability is for the foundations and the characters. I need to pay attention to how many cards they have. Like it is a cool system because there is a lot going on.
This is a high skill ceiling, but also a super high skill floor
Mhm.
in order to get into this. That's why if you're going to teach someone this game, my recommendation is grab the Turbo decks.
Do they also
Yeah,
have
or the demo deck. I've just been using exclusively the demo deck for new players because it omits 2 card types, so it introduces them to the basis of the game without getting too crazy, which is why I've been using essentially just the demo decks. And it has My Hero, which 9 times out of 10 like draws the person in immediately anyway.
Right.
I think playing decks with less card types than there actually are is a great way to invest, as long as it gets people on, and because it's like, okay, I have my cards that deal damage and my cards that stop damage. That's it, like, and then you're like, oh, hey, guess what? If you like it, there's summons too. There's instant, like you can bring those into the experience. But I think that's a great thing that something does that we're not going to talk about. Dan?
Jordan, I wanted to say that the demo decks that we have for My Hero Academia, of course, are part of the card set we'll get in the rival decks. I'm just thinking about the longevity of this episode. The turbo decks and / rival decks, when those are released, are the same thing. And I bring those up because they build those to have what your demo was missing that you gave to Dylan, which is specific interplay between the 2 decks. Like sometimes very specific. Like the
I really wish
has a card that's like reduce the damage of a punch attack. Like,
and
okay,
the Midoriya has reduced the damage of a Fury or a speed of Fury.
Yeah. So they have some of those. The Cowboy Bebop ones that are available right now have.
I regret not having them play those because they literally are the best pairing I've ever seen in a card game. Period. Like, as far as
and I'll play again.
Pushing them together.
I mean, I'll play again come MHA anyway, but
those decks are Spike and Vicious. Spike is all about. Vicious is all about flipping your opponent's foundations over to buff what he's doing. Spike is all about flipping his own foundations over.
Flipping foundations makes them basic.
Turns
lands,
off their effects.
Right? Yeah.
Yep, they're basic lands effectively.
That's such an awesome way to do it. By the way, I just want to throw out that no card games don't flip cards very often because
enough.
No, yeah, exactly, because they go, well, that card could be anything, and what if that's cheating? What if there's but flipping lands is a great idea. That is awesome. How isn't that a thing that Magic or Final Fantasy does, where they're like, oh, I want to get rid of that backup. I just have a card effect that, because you're like, okay, how do you blank a card, right? Do you put a token on it? Do both of you just make a gentleman's agreement to remember? No, you just flip the card over. It's just a new mechanic. It's a great and super intuitive little mechanic that I forgot about this until you just mentioned it, but I actually really dug that. I was like, God, that's so, and I get to show off my sleeves too.
Nice.
Another good point about it too is it adds interesting space for the developer. Adds interesting space for the developers because in UFS they have cool effects on flips that they can make more powerful than you could normally do because their cost is to flip it over. So it's like a one-time use kind of deal. So they can make more potent effects that you can use it, but now this just becomes a basic pay for stuff.
Instead of it's an intuitive way to work in once per game effects, right? Yep. Because you can't go, oh, hey, we both have to remember that you already used that effect. There's actually a card in Final Fantasy TCG that just came out last set that I think is a great little card, but it's a little odd from design point in that it's a 1 CP, which means it's effectively the cheapest backup you can, cheapest land you can play. If people don't know, in Final Fantasy you have to pay for your lands before you play them. 1 CP is half a card because each card discards to make 2, or you can tap a land to play it, right? You tap 1 backup to produce the 1 CP for it. It can be played with any CP. It's a character that it's a land that when it enters the field, you declare its element. It becomes that for the rest of the game, and then it can tap for that element, and it can tap to buff every character that is its same element. I guess that it's not that bad if it's in a monocolor deck, right? Because then we're like, all right, we all just agree it's red, and all my red guys are bigger when I tap. When I declare that that's what I'm doing. But in multicolor decks, I'm waiting for a tournament to come when somebody says, yeah, fire, and then 13 turns later they're like, yeah, I'm gonna tap it. All of my ice forwards gain plus blank. I'm waiting because we haven't had a big event yet, but I'm waiting for that to happen. And Final Fantasy also doesn't have it doesn't really have like tokens that like you would go, okay, fire token or ice token. And I'm specifically using that because in my gameplay vid that we're going to upload, I'm going to send to Dan here after this. I was playing it, and I commented a stream yesterday that was about 5 hours long with the RVA returners, and I was in the booth commenting with them. They shouted out Many Maniacs a bunch of times. We got a bunch of stuff like that. It was super cool, like an awesome little like community building thing. And the RVA returns are a little more raunchy, so I can like break out like some curse words and stuff just to be like with the boys. You know, it's a little more like 18+ environment. But you know, there was a time when somebody was playing the deck that I showcased this last Friday. Somebody's playing that like plus or minus like 4 cards, and he was playing that card that I'm talking about, that I'm running, and he's like, judges, how do we declare, like, how do we remember? And we were kind of just like, well, you declare it, and you and your opponent have to remember, and us judges will remember. You know, like that. Like that's not a great like way to do it.
Do the tournament guidelines not allow you to write a slip of paper out or something?
I don't.
That's what we would do in
think
Magic
so.
all the time.
I don't think
like
so.
would clone something.
I'm thinking that like people are just going to be expected to have like colored dice or something, you know, because I'll just like put a die, but that doesn't seem like the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
I would just write it on a
clear,
slip of paper.
Yeah, to be clear, there is no specific ruling, guideline, or like attached addendum to any rules that state how to denote that is a constant for the rest of the game. Because before, there were cards that could tap for any element, but they read in the text that they either A, become that element, like become all elements, right? So you don't have to like keep track, or they read that they're a color, but they tap for another, right? Like they read on the card. Whereas this card, it says when it enters, you decide, and from all points forward, it is that element, and it taps for that. There's only one other card in the game that's similar to that, which is Camelot, which he is a forward or creature, if people don't know, that is a dark card. At the beginning of your turn after that, you can declare an element, and he becomes that, and he can't be chosen for any effect with that element, or of any card that is that element. So like basically he gains spell shield, like an infinite spell shield for whatever element you make him, which, you know, used to be super good because you can go, okay, I'm playing against a mono red deck, I'm gonna make him red. Now you can't target him at all with any of your red abilities. That, you know what I mean, like, which is super good. Which wasn't as hard because he was he was just one forward, or he was one creature, right? You can go, well, we can all like deduce that I would just make him the thing, you know, that I'm fighting against, right? He's a counter spell basically. But as a backup, it's a little unclean. So sorry to make this a big tangent, but like I don't feel like that's a great like way to. I mean, I don't know if they've created a way to cleanly interpret that. The point of this was that flipping a backup or flipping a foundation or a land is a great way to say that's generic now.
Yes, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Sorry.
I'll give you that. I will say that what you're going after though is like something. It's almost like a holy grail in card games that in TCGs that haven't been able to be implemented very well. It's things that are game lasting permanent effects or something. And actually the reason why I think digital card games recently have found so much success is that they're able to keep track of everything like that. So they're able to go into that realm of card design space that hasn't not been touched very much in the tabletop realm because that's not an issue for them. They just, okay, now it's black. It'll appear black now instead of, it'll appear red now instead of whatever it was. Or
which is actually in the digital version of Final Fantasy, the unofficial Octagon version of it, Camelot would just become like he would gain like a purple border if he's lightning or a red border if he's fire, which is a great way to do that. It's such an intuitive way, like you said. And there's a lot of effects that like shackle and stuff that do that too. Sorry, Dan, continue.
Right. So I wanted to bring that up as well, though, because the other advantage that digital card games have is that the by taking care of all those rules and tracking for you, that barrier to getting into the game is significantly lower.
If done well, is significantly lower.
If done well. If done well. And there are certainly games that do it better, and there's certainly games that do it worse. But
I don't have a ton of experience with any of them, but Mew, stop playing with my dice.
As this is an episode about getting on the bus and not about once per game effects, I wanted to try and wrap it back into that, because another way to get your friends into a game, if you're trying to be the bus driver, if there's a digital version, a digital implementation, let's say, I don't know why, but Magic just isn't popular in your area and you're trying to get people into it, you can have them try out Arena, or if they like
or if they just want to get into easy TCGs, like Hearthstone is a super easy TCG to get into. I've heard. I haven't played it, but I've looked at the mechanics, and it looks like a pretty low end, like you said, mental investment into understanding kind of the mechanics of TCGs.
In general, if you want to get into TCGs in general, or a specific one, doesn't matter, and your friends don't play them, having them start by playing Hearthstone, Eternal, Legends of Runeterra, Magic Arena, something online like that, can get them to get to what I was getting at earlier, which is where the fun exists in playing these card games. And by building up sort of a background in how card games work in general, you can start to apply that to other games that you tend to learn. Is usually learning your first TCG, and I can tell you this from experience teaching people their first TCG, it is way harder than teaching them their second or their third or their fifth or their
100%.
And I would be really...
You taught me really Dragon Ball Z, right?
I would be really afraid of trying to teach someone UFS as their first card game.
Sure. Oh man, that would be...
You taught me Dragon Ball TCG, right? The DBZ TCG?
What about it?
Were you the person that taught me DBZ TCG, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, because I played like a starter with Cole, and those starters, speaking of making good starters, they were the worst starters. They quickly summarize. They weren't legal to play, like, and not because of like card limits, because decks needed to be made a certain like color in order to work, and these decks just had every color in them. So like they literally they couldn't work. Like the card design didn't allow for that. Dan, do you have any idea why they did that? By the way, I know that you were kind of into Panini, but like that was a weird choice for a starter.
Their initial starter decks were terrible. And
about as bad as
no idea why they ended up the way they are exactly. They did a much better job in set 4 with the second set of starters.
Yep, they were playable.
Yeah, they were playable.
100% better already.
Actually, so let's close this out. I want to ask you guys about this, because both of you guys have a similar situation in that you guys started to really get into trading card games in your current form because of the Panini Dragon Ball Z card game, and coming to Paradox, where I taught it to you guys to play.
Sensei.
What was your... Thank you. Yes. What was your experience with the bus in that scenario? Dylan, I'll have you start. Just kind of describe to me how you felt, if you felt the pull of the bus, and how you reacted and responded to it.
So I must have been 19 or 20 when I felt this. I'm pretty sure that the bus pulled me so strong that I lost a relationship because of it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I was dating this girl who was a great person. We don't talk very much anymore, but we're still friends. And I just became kind of a close friends with Cole. And I never really had like a dude friend that I would go out and hang out with. Like I had my roommate that was like my best friend from Andrew when I was a kid. But I never really had a friend that I'd go out and like have a few drinks with and like chill at their place, stuff like that. Like typical 20-some-year-old adult person things. Like I didn't really have that. So I became an adult person thing, and I jumped head first into it, and I spent a lot of time just chilling. And the first time that I went over to Cole's place, which, oh my god, such a mess all the time. It was a total dude pad. We played the Dragon Ball starters that so his friend Adam, our mutual friend, was like, "Yo, you should check these out. There's a Dragon Ball Z TCG." And Cole was like, he had played a lot of Pokemon before, and so he had like these binders of Pokemon. And I know he played some Magic. I'm not sure exactly how much. I don't think he played it very competitively, but I know he played some Magic. At least he had knowledge of it. He still does. And he kind of got me into Dragon Ball because like we were both huge Dragon Ball Z fans. Like if you're 20 some years old as an adult male, and like especially like 5 years ago, and you didn't at least like Dragon Ball Z, which is incredibly unlikely because behind Pikachu, Super Saiyan Goku is the most recognizable figure outside of Japan. So like we all kind of, he was like, yeah, you got to get into it. So we picked it up and we tried the starter deck, and I was like, so I'm playing as Goku, and my objective is to beat my opponent up or get all the Dragon Balls. Okay. Because I think he had Krillin and I had Goku, if I remember the starter decks properly, which I may not. But I know I remember one of them being Krillin.
Rip.
And I was like, okay, so let's play this. And I tried it, and I was like, I'm reading like the starter deck, like how to play, and I'm like, something's wrong, right? Like I was like, I have zero experience in TCGs. I'd played some like Yu-Gi-Oh when I was like in 4th grade with friends, right? Played like a couple summers of Yu-Gi-Oh, and like I maybe played or saw one game of Magic the Gathering being played, right? I had at 20, I had like zero experience, and I'm like, It says if you're building a deck, you pick a mastery, which is one of like 6 colors. And then your deck has to be included with the same colors unless they're non-styled. I don't think this works the way that they have it. So like it was a weird experience, but actually because it was weird, it got me more invested because I was like, something's wrong. And I love like a good like something's wrong puzzle, like figuring, it gave me a reason to like figure it out. So Cole's like, well, I think Cole knew Dan before this. Or like, did you know Cole at all before? Yeah. So like Cole kind of knew Dan. Where did you know me from?
Well, it's just like usual. It's just from Paradox.
Okay. So like Cole kind of knew Dan, and he was like,
around then.
Okay. So he was like, okay. I was like, well, I'd be interested if we actually played this correctly. I was like, this seems really cool. Like, who wouldn't love to be Goku and like play or spar and stuff? Like, sounds cool. And again, zero TCG experience. So he's like, okay, well, I'll look it up. And he found a Facebook page, and I was like, okay, cool. And he found a Dragon Ball Z TCG Facebook page at Paradox. I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, let's go this Saturday. And I was like, we work at McDonald's. Saturdays is a tall order. So we got we got, I think, one Saturday off a month. I think we ended up doing that, but we dedicated our Saturday to go, and we were so hype. It was like when a new movie's coming out, and like you gather like 12 friends, you're all like, yeah, let's go see this new movie before you could sit with 12 friends. But for those of you who were born at this point in time, this is weird. This is not a normal point in time. So people used to do things together in big groups. So like it was like that, where we were like, okay, let's go. And we were excited, like the 2 weeks up to like getting both the same day off on Saturday. And we went and we played it, and it was like this whole new world. And Dan thought I was a total jerk. And I met like all these people. I was a loudmouth, super excitable person, and I guess I have bad first introductions to most people, especially when I was like 20. That's a story Dan could tell for a later time. But I met like all these wonderful people, and it was like I was excited. I didn't know what I was getting onto, and then I jumped in, and I played against all these people that were playing like super different decks, and like some people were playing like degenerate like Namekian decks, and once I got on the bus, it was crazy because I had no idea what to expect. The only reason I wanted to get on the bus was because the vinyl was Super Saiyan Goku, right? Like it was like hop on and try it out, and I got there, and it was a tour bus of all sorts of different people that were all doing different things, that were all like kind of in like a similar space to me, because I'm sure they'd all like tried the starter decks and been like weirded out, but then they all like built like a constructed deck, and I can't remember, but I think I came with like a sort of a constructed deck because we talked about it, but once I got that constructed and I played against like a Saiyan Trunks. I think Josh Danzel was playing Saiyan Trunks and Jared Burhow was playing Namekian Piccolo, and Chris was playing Piccolo, and I think Jordan was there playing.
Guy.
No, I know, but I know Josh Danzel was also playing Saiyan Trunks too.
I know. I immediately switched to Ginyu because I was like, "Oh, this is going to be."
And then Jordan tried Ginyu, and then I got on that Ginyu train. And once I got on that Ginyu train, I never got off Orange. I was like, no, this is the way to play. You're playing
After
all
I
these
swept
things.
ValleyCon, and everyone thought Namekian Piccolo was going to win, and I dominated them all.
So
that was
cool.
great.
It was so cool.
And then I made the worst trade in my TCG career with Dan.
What'd you do? What was this? Hold on.
I traded a heroic plan for a heroic energy sphere.
What?
To be fair, at the
We
time
didn't
they
know
were
the
valued
prices,
similarly.
yeah.
Oh,
We were just
no.
like, it's an ultra rare, it's an ultra rare. They're
Yeah.
the same, right?
That's-
So we swapped, and then like 3 months
People
later, I
still
was
do
like,
that.
I'm dumb.
Gotcha.
That's so funny. Dan's like, thanks for the $180, loser.
And the worst part is, I've never gotten another heroic energy sphere.
Yep. I actually didn't like the distribution of spheres so much that I refused to play them my entire competitive career. The only time I ever played them was after the game had died, and I was playing the Supreme Kai Cup. I played one heroic energy sphere, and it won me a lot of games. I'm not gonna lie, it won me a lot of games because of it. But yeah, people were like, "Why don't you use spheres? You're an aggressive deck. You have to cancel time as a warrior's tool." And I was like, "Because they're $180, and I refuse to spend that." I was like, "I can foil my entire deck out for like $180."
Wrong answer. Your response should have been, I'm a true warrior. I don't need tricks to win.
I don't need tricks. Okay, but Jordan, what Dan asked, your experience of getting on.
Well, my experience was a little bit different than yours. Like I said, I had been playing TCGs for a while. That was near the end of the lifetime for me with Magic. I had just moved to Fargo, and it was like a couple months in. We were starting the semester, and I was trying to find people to play Magic with. I had found a couple roommates that I was strong-arming into playing and learning the game because they had never played before. So I was like basically strong-arming them into trying it. They love the game now, even though I stopped playing almost as quick as they started playing. But
Can we
they
ask
play
Dan to
a
move
bunch.
real
To
quick?
this day, they're heavy into it. But
Dan, blink twice if you're in Fargo, North Dakota.
I'm pretty sure
I'm
Dan's
here.
Oh, he
Okay.
is here. His video
He is there. His
stopped.
video, his
Okay.
video's stopped. Okay.
Getting a little
Okay.
lag, but it's okay.
Yeah, so I was looking for something else, and I went into Paradox because I like board games and card games, and I went there to like get some Magic garbage.
went
I don't
to
know. I
get
knew there was a
some.
pre-release coming up, so I was like, oh, let's see if information. I looked online, and I was like, there's this shop Paradox. I'll give it a shot. It's close to the school. And then I went in there, and I think it was either my first or like second time being at Paradox, and I saw my eye immediately caught this dope poster that had Goku on it, and I was like, why is there a Goku poster over there? I need to know what this is. And I saw it, and Dan was like setting up at the time. He had just put this poster up. Literally,
Was that a
like,
patented
seconds
Dan
beforehand.
Green poster, or was that a Panini official poster?
It was mine, and it was compared to
Yeah.
my current stuff pretty awful. But I'm really glad that it still caught Jordan's attention.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and like I saw it and I was looking at it, and like I looked to my left, and there was this dude like setting out cards that said Dragon Ball, and I was like, "Did you make this poster?" And he's like, "Yeah, are you interested?" And I was like, "I'm interested in anything that has Dragon Ball Z."
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, I can give you a demo right now if you have time." And I was like, "Awesome! I don't have anything else
Well,
to do.
shit.
Let's sit down and play." And he handed me a deck, and my mind was blown at that this game was dope because I remember seeing the cards like a long time ago before I had the money to buy
Mhm.
card games. And
Yep.
then I was like, "Oh, is this like that old game? Is it coming back?" And he's like, "Actually, they're redoing it, and you could play some of the other." He gave me the whole spiel.
I forgot
And I was
because
like,
I had that when I was a kid too. I had like 5 old
Yeah.
old Dragon Ball cards.
and
when
I was
like,
immediately like,
6.
"I'm in. I'm hype about this." And then Dan had his regular Score Z Trunks deck too, and this was before they had like the Trunks revealed, so he just had the base starter deck stuff. So he had like a Krillin pre-made deck and like a Goku demo deck, and the starter deck characters essentially. And I was like, dope. And then I mentioned how much I like Trunks, and he's like, well, let's play another demo, and I'll let you play my old Score Z Trunks like thing, and I played that and it just blew my mind. I was like, this Trunks is insane. This is so crazy. I love it. It's gonna be great. And then I was hooked from that point. Like I was in from that point on. I was
That's so cool.
seat number 1 at that bus.
That was awesome.
Yeah, you guys were both. I mean, obviously, just pillars of the community as we built it up, and
Really? Did you feel like I was a pillar of community for Dragon Ball Z?
I did. I mean, you guys were there
That's
at the
so
ground
cool.
level, you know.
Yeah. Cool. I
and
never thought of myself as that for Dragon Ball.
The-
That's so cool.
And
The
you were
thing
always
is-
you were welcoming and nice to all the new people. That
Yeah,
was one of
exactly.
the reasons why.
That's so cool.
And the thing is, when you're trying to get a bus going with a bunch of people getting on and getting a community running, building that initial set of community is what helps lower the bar for people to find it and get into it also. So I'm just going to end this with a couple of tips for anyone who is looking to be a bus driver. And I'm going to use your stories as examples because we did, I think, a really great job together just getting that community running all the way until the bus crashed.
until they took the fuel and they like stopped producing that fuel.
Right.
Like,
So
God damn it.
the tips from the stories are, one, posters in your local store. Work with your local store. Talk to people. Just put stuff up. Get signage any kind you can. Two, online communities. Facebook group was
Huge.
critical for us. It worked for us. I don't know what social media the newfangled kids are doing these days, but we always have used Facebook for that stuff. But I'm certain that there are other ways.
Start a
Discord is very
TikTok.
popular now.
A TCG
Shout out to the
TikTok.
Metamaniacs Discord server. And demo decks. I actually worked with a local printer who we were friends with to print sticker versions of the revealed demo deck cards.
I remember
And
this.
those are what I used to teach the game before the game released.
So cool.
We ran multiple demo days, a couple weeks apart, leading all the way up to the launch, so that when the game launched, people were ready to play immediately. They didn't have to learn. They didn't have to try it out. We started with a tournament, and people just picked up their stuff, built their
So
decks
janky
like
and
the
fun.
night before.
Dude, I remember
And
that
That
day.
was so
It was-
cool.
oh.
That's
The
how we
worst
had.
part is I had something terrible happen that day, and it didn't even didn't even matter because it was a release day for I literally was just like, F it, I don't care, I gotta get in the shop. I think I had my battery died and I locked my keys in the car at the same time, and I was just like, I tried a couple times, I was gonna do stuff, and I was like, you know what? F it, there's cars waiting for me in the shop. I'm too hype, and I literally just don't even care that my car is a piece of garbage right now. It's time for DBZ.
That's awesome.
And that is what that is what can happen when the bus is going and you're on it, and it's just so exciting. It's not just about the game, it's about the experience. It's about being with these people and enjoying the game together, and just everyone being excited about the same thing at the same time,
Getting
and
friends
the
that are into it.
possibilities that it holds. So-
Like the community is what keeps games alive, especially small games like this. And having if you have friends that trust you that have similar interests and you are also into it, do what Dan did and just plaster that thing. I'd messaged Dan just a moment ago about it, where it's if you Dan said how important copy pasting and sending links out and letting people see, the more eyes you see, the more clicks you get, the more follows you get, the more interested people are in getting on that bus. Because if Cole hadn't told me that there was a Dragon Ball Z TCG that was starting up at a weird day when we were slow at McDonald's, and he's like, oh yeah, I think I heard something about it, I would have played it, and I wouldn't be here today. There's some awesome experiences waiting for you if people just know to mention it. So like Dan's saying, if you want people to get on the bus, just talk about the bus.
A recent testament to that too is the Digimon card game.
Yeah.
where I had Dan make us the store a page for Digimon, just like he did for DBZ, and we literally, over the course of not even a full 24 hours of having that page up, we've doubled the amount of people that are already I'm in. So
It's cool. It's cool. Also, those sleeves are the cleanest looking sleeves I've seen in my days. Oh my gosh.
and they're foiled.
Dan, have you seen the foil War Greymon? The War Garurumons are weird.
It looks like he got stung by a bee, and
He's
his snout is a little inflated.
Metal
I will-
Gorilla.
I'll have to take a look at them later, but I mean, Bandai does an incredible job lowering that barrier for people to get into games anyway. They make things very exciting, and there's certainly, there's some amount of effort that the company has to put in to
They're
make the
also-
game appear more accessible in the first place, and that's where I want to correct something. I might have felt bad if I didn't say this before this podcast ended, but while I think UFS as a first card game would be very difficult to learn and get into, I think that Jasco is working very hard to make the My Hero Academia CCG as accessible as possible.
And they have the like, just in like the difference between card designs that I've seen, the UVS My Hero Academia stuff is so clean in card design, and it's a lot more legible and much easier to read than, I mean, and it says the same stuff. Like, this is the hard thing, like, to get across to people, is that it's the same stuff, but it's packaged so much better, that it's obviously from a team that recognizes the difficult, like, the things that they didn't realize would be difficult, and like the little barriers. Like, it's about notching those barriers down, and they saw these cards look so much better.
Even
Just in the
something as
cards.
simple as they have the keywords be different colored than the rest of the text. Like, that immediately
Boom.
like conveys what that is. From across the table now, I can easily tell what keywords your attack has just because they're colored words now.
Which is something that Final Fantasy doesn't do. I don't think it's something that Magic the Gathering does. I think,
But
like, great.
Dragon Ball Super and Digimon both do color keyworded boxes on their
great-
keywords as well. It's
Great idea.
It's such a great and important thing, because again, just reducing that amount of mental burden on you helps you get in and enjoy the game more.
That, and from a psychology background, just people remember colors better than they remember words or names. So, like, your brain connects more viscerally with colors, and it creates memories easier with it. So I see blue, and I'm like, okay, this deck draws a lot. That's all I need to see. Or I see fire, I'm like, this deck's gonna burn me. Like, I don't have to read any of the cards. It's like my first initial impression of it. So, like, to see color coded, like haste or vigilance or whatever, like, if I were to see that, I'd be like, oh, that would be a great way without me having to, like, encyclopedia every card, which is, like Dan said, like, that's the next step in skill floor with TCGs, is generally like learning your deck, learning like the average like players' decks around you, and then learning everything, which is like a much higher investment. But sorry, I just wanted to say that the colors that's another great way that I just think I think Wizards of the Coast could learn things from the way Jasco handles UVS. Like, I have zero investment in this game. Like, I'm not like Dan or Jordan, where I'm like hype no matter what on this, and not no matter what. They're hyped for very good reasons, like very good reasons, and a lot of them are the reasons that I'm touting. Like, it's just like the game has such, like, even when it's so difficult, like, they've taken the difficulties of it and compressed them into like bite-sized nuggets that like people can start like consuming. And I saw all these people who had no evidence of awareness of UFS before Gen Con go in, try the demos, and tried the tournaments for My Hero Academia, and I didn't hear a single person say that they disliked their experience. And that's out of like 60 people. Like, there's generally outliers that'll say, wow, I was so confused, and like da-da-da-da-da. But like the new card designs from like their language, like, design language is important. But I just think that they do a lot to make this incredibly difficult. Like, I mean, learning any TCG is difficult. I had difficulties learning Magic just recently. Like, learning anything's difficult, especially like when, like, sometimes it's harder when you do know TCGs, because you're like, okay, I understand that. And you glance,
sure.
and you're like, I understand that. So the point is here, and you think it's here, so you jump way over it. Yep. and then like you're like 5 games in, and you're so confused why something isn't working. That was me. So,
well, I think we've really run the course here on this topic, but I really appreciate you guys' insight, and it's great to hear you guys talk so nicely about me. So this is completely a self-serving episode. I
Haven't
just
given
wanted
us
to hear
much
you guys
reasons
say
not
I
to.
did a great job teaching you how to play Dragon Ball Z. No, I'm kidding. But I think the bus is an interesting thing to think about. I think there are times when you're going to be excited to play a game for great reasons, and I think there's going to be times when you see a bus leaving and you might need to think a little more about whether or not it's something you are really going to stay on for a long time and whether you want to commit that to it. And sometimes a bus left a long time ago and you might want to join it or you might not. And I hope at least we've kind of given you some food for thought in some of the things that we tend to think about when we're joining a game, and some of the pitfalls to look for and some of the ways that you can help be a bus driver if you're gonna try and get a community built up for a game that you're excited about. So with that said, guys, before everything glitches out for me, we're gonna have to sign off here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Huge thanks, of course, to our Patreon supporters. We have some amazing supporters on Patreon who make this weekly podcast really a reality for you guys, that provide us the resources we need to be able to do this on a weekly basis. If you guys did enjoy this, please, if you can, give us a like, give us a sub, give us a good rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to.
That helps a lot.
It helps
help a
ton.
lot.
Please help these algorithms get our podcast to other people. Do what you can to help us out, and we would really appreciate that. If you didn't, or in any case, give us some feedback. Leave a comment down below. Email me at dan@metamaniacs.com. Let me know what you're thinking. Find me on Facebook. Join the Discord. We got all sorts of ways you can communicate with us, and we just want to hear from you guys and deliver you guys the content you want. So that all said, we're going to sign off. We will see you guys next week in the next episode of the Metamaniacs Show. See ya.
Thanks, guys.